Hello. All right, you guys. So last week we talked a lot about character traits. And what we did is we looked at indirect characterization using a steel chart, which was looking at a character's speech, their thoughts, their effect on others, their actions, and their looks, and then asking ourselves, well, what does that tell us about the character's personality? What words are we using to describe them? Well, once we kind of identify character traits, we move on to the next step of really exploring our characters by looking at what's called character motivation. And so, when we're looking at character motivation, we're asking ourselves, why do your protagonists do what they do? The protagonist is the main character of the story, and good readers are able to look at the main characters and really examine why they're behaving the way that they behave. Why do they act the way that they act? Why do they say the things that they do? And so we're exploring your character in such a way that we can almost take this learning and then apply it to real people and say, well, what's motivating these people? Why do they act the way that they act? So let me show you some examples of this. When we're looking at character motivation, we're really looking at 6 different questions that we can ask ourselves to start exploring why our character acts the way that they do. So the first question is, what is their backstory? So we're going to look at what were some past experiences that your character has had, or maybe experiences that you can infer that they have had based on the way that they behave. And so in life, every person has a backstory. Just means every person has lived life, had experiences, had heartbreaks, had happy moments. We've all been through a lot. And everything we have been through shapes who we are now and the actions and the choices we make today. And so when we read, we want to take a look at some of those past experiences of our character and ask ourselves, well, what does that tell us about why they're behaving the way that they behave now? Number 2, what do they want? Every character and every person is driven by what they want. What does your character want more than anything else in the world? Do they want to feel accepted? Do they want to have success? Do they want revenge? So we start to question, like, what does this character, in the moment of your story, what do they really want? What is driving them? Number 3, what do they fear? Guys, we are absolutely driven on fear, and I talk in my example later. It could be as small as a fear of spiders, we're scared of spiders, therefore we won't squish it and we'll start screaming. But it can also be that our characters, maybe they fear something greater like failure, or they fear rejection, or they fear, um, what am I trying to say? I keep sticking with failure, but our fears really dictate the way that we behave a lot of the time. Number 4, what goals do they have? As human beings and, even in books with our characters, we set goals. And so sometimes your character will have maybe a short-term goal or a long-term goal in mind. And ultimately, the decisions that they make are ones that will help them meet that goal. Number 5, what emotions drive them? We're all driven by our emotions. We are so emotional as humans that a lot of times the decisions we make or the actions we do are driven mostly on how we're feeling at that moment. So if we're feeling angry and our emotion is angry, then oftentimes our actions are going to be reflective of that anger. And then lastly, it's called primary or secondary. We basically ask ourselves, sometimes characters are motivated by many things. And so when this is the case, we just need to ask ourselves, what is the major motivation here? Which one kind of stands out amongst the rest in this particular moment? So I'm going to go through each one just super brief, and then we're going to practice this with our story. And so for this one here, what is their backstory? I'm just going to give you an example. So let's say we have a character, and in the past, that character's parents got divorced. Their dad is no longer in their life. and their mom is working full-time trying to take care of their family and is therefore never home. We can probably assume as readers that with all of that information, that maybe our character might be feeling a little bit lonely. Maybe that character feels like a little bit disconnected, like they don't have a person that they could really connect to in their family. Or, worst case scenario, maybe even that person feels a little bit unloved based on their experience of the past. Well, those feelings may be driving factors in why they do the things that they do. Maybe because they don't have a dad in their life and their mom isn't around all the time. Maybe that means they don't have skills that are great enough to have good relationships. And so maybe in the story, we're going to see that their relationships with other people aren't very strong because they don't know what a strong relationship looks like. So as you can see, we're basically just looking at, hey, what do we know has happened to this character in the past? And then we're kind of looking at that and saying, okay, how might that past event or events affect the decisions that are being made now in the story? Okay, our next one is, what do they want? So what does your character want more than anything in the world? Well, here's an example. Let's say we're reading a book about a girl who is a talented gymnast. Her entire life has been built around being a gymnast. Every day after school, she goes to the gym. On the weekend, she's at the gym. She has competitions. Her entire life is about being a gymnast. Well, being a gymnast requires a lot of discipline and strength and healthy living. And so days before an important competition, she is asked to go to a party from a girl at her school. Well, because she's so busy with gymnastics all the time, she doesn't really have a lot of friends. So she's very eager and interested in going to this party. So as a reader, we ask ourselves here, well, what does our character want? Well, our character wants to do well in gymnastics, or she wouldn't be spending her life on it. But our character also wants to go to the party because she wants to make friends. And so in this scenario, we kind of ask ourselves, well, based on the actions that she's making and the choice that she makes, what does she really want? Which one kind of comes out on top? That's going to tell us a lot about what she really wants. And this is just sort of a sheet that we're going to be using to say, well, what does our character want? In this case, our character, wanted to be acknowledged. She wanted friendships. This character, let's see here. This character, maybe popularity is what was driving them because, they wanted to go to the party. So we just ask ourselves, what does that character want? This one is, what do they fear? And so we ask ourselves, what does our character least want to happen? Like, is there something that our character is afraid of that is making them act a certain way? So let me give you an example. We have a character named John, and his mother remarries. His mother recently remarries, and her new husband, Alan, now becomes John's stepdad. Well, John is kind of standoffish. He's really hesitant to accept Alan as his stepdad, and he's unwilling to let his walls down and get close to him. He's seen men, his dad leave his mom before, so why should he trust that this wouldn't happen again? What's different about Alan? And so in this scenario, our main character, John, it sounds like he fears rejection. He fears that his mom is going to be possibly rejected by Alan, like his dad did. And maybe he himself fears getting too close to Alan because, you never know what's going to happen. So I would say in this case, in my mind, I'm inferring that maybe this character fears rejection, and that's why he's very close off to Alan. And so this character fears that, like past experiences, this person isn't going to stick around. So this fear that he has of rejection may cause our character to keep his distance, from Alan, but maybe even from his mom too. He might resent her. And so that may cause a lot of conflicts in the story between John and the other characters. And so when we're looking at our characters, we're asking ourselves, what do they fear? Is my character doing what they are doing because they are afraid of something? Number 4 is, what goals do they have? So an example of this might be this. We have a character, Alyssa. She's trying to lose weight before her wedding. She wants to lose about 10 pounds because she wants to feel a little bit more confident in her dress. But at work that day, her department is celebrating her coworker's 50th birthday, and there's a cake there. Well, Alyssa decides not to eat any of the cake because her goal is to lose weight, and she knows that eating the cake will cause her to possibly not meet her goal. In this situation, we see that Alyssa has a lot of self-discipline, and she is a character that is very motivated because obviously she was willing to do what it took to meet her goal. So her action of not eating the cake was because of the goal she set. So her motivation here was to reach her goal. All right, number 5, what emotions drive them? As I told you before, we are often, as individuals, driven completely by our in-the-moment emotions. And so an example of this would be a character named Kathy, and she realizes that someone has stolen $20 out of her locker while she was at recess. Well, her parents gave her that $20 that morning so that it would last her all week. So she knows that when her parents find out that she has lost it, they're going to be really, really upset at her. So she's feeling stressed and she's feeling upset herself. Now the reset's over, she has to go to math class, which is her most difficult class, and it's a test day. In this scenario, we can infer as readers that possibly Kathy's stress and her feeling really upset is going to impact the rest of her day. So she might not be making decisions that are normal for her. She might be making decisions that are completely driven by the emotion that she's feeling at the time. So she may not participate in class. She might not do well on the test. She might not acknowledge the teacher when the teacher says, good afternoon. And that is all based on the current emotion that she's feeling. And then lastly, primary or secondary. Again, this is just simply, a lot of times there are many things that motivate us. We might be motivated by fear and by something that we really want, all at the same time. And so it's our job as a reader to ask ourselves, well, what is the main motivator in this particular part of the book? So we might be reading part of the story and we're realizing that there's a lot of things that are at play here that may be driving the character to do what they do. So it's our job to say, well, which one sort of takes precedence? Which one is the biggest motivator? And that's it. The 6 ways that you can kind of tell what is motivating a character, 6 things that we look at. So ultimately, I'm going to be asking you guys to do that with our book. And so we're going to read a couple more chapters, and we're just going to be thinking about, well, what's really motivating our character, maybe to do some of the smaller things that he does, but also doing some of the bigger long-term things that he does as well. All right, so you guys, what I'm going to ask you to do is use this video and this slide presentation and fill in some general notes in order for you to remember these 6 things. And then you will complete the assignment, which asks you to do some reading and then practice identifying some of these motivating factors in our book. Feel free to reach out to me if you need help. If not, I will see you guys this week. Bye.